terms of controlling the breath, then, what are, for the listeners, some of the sort of quick, off the top of your head, benefits to controlling your breath?
Yeah, so I mean, breathing's one of those things that it's automatic. So when you tell people you're a breath teacher or a breath coach, they're like, well,
I can remember that joke. It was about David Beckham listening to a podcast or something. What you're listening to? Oh, it's just Victoria telling me to breathe in and breathe out. It's like that kind of thing, isn't it? Where people talk to people, and it's like, well, what can you do other than breathe? But there's a lot that you can do.
exactly. There's so much to it, and what I teach, we look at three different things. We look at the biochemistry of breathing, the biomechanics, and the resonance, or the pace of the breath. And we're trying to influence all of these things. Now, certain breath practices may only look at one of those things. And for a true intervention to really be successful, you need to consider all three. The foundation of all three of those things is that we breathe through the nose. 24 hours a day at rest, and then as much as possible as well during exercise. Now, last time we spoke about this, and I was talking about the small hack you can use to get the guaranteed nasal breathing during sleep, which it's very simple. You just tape the mouth shut. A few different ways of doing it. Small piece, like a postage stamp size piece, just across the middle of the lips. You can go all the way across as well if you're comfortable doing that. Ben said he was going to try it after we spoke last week, and I'm curious to hear how he got on.
I didn't try it. I will admit I didn't try it. It's only because I mentioned it to my wife and I said, look, he's talked about taping mouth shut when you sleep. And she looked at me really funny, first of all, admittedly. And then I tried to explain to her the benefits of doing it, and obviously didn't come across as clear with as you have about the benefits behind it. So she kept on looking at me. And then when I pulled out a roll of Gorilla Tape, which is like heavy duty tape you'd use to hold pipes together, she just said you're not getting into bed with that on your mouth. So it is still something I want to try. And I think what I have found actually since our last discussion was I have been more aware of the fact that I do breathe an awful lot through the mouth. And we messaged after last failed attempt to record, and I said I do have sometimes quite poor sleep quality. But one of the things I have found is that I'm more aware of the fact I'm actually trying to breathe more through the nose. And I went for a walk around the woods the other morning because I didn't have time to do exercise and I wanted to get a bit of space before work. And I went for about a 20-minute walk, and I deliberately just was breathing through my nose for the whole time. I don't know if I felt any difference, but I guess it's not one of the things you would feel an immediate difference from, right?
Yeah, possibly not. I mean, you may not feel different for going for a walk and breathing through your nose to how you felt before you went, but you might feel different to had you have done that and not been so conscious of your breathing. If you monitor or track anything with like Garmin or a Whoop or like whatever you use, I'd be really interested to see that kind of data. You might find that your heart rate variability is higher because you're less stressed. Really simple way to think about these things is, if the mouth is open, that's a sign to the brain from the body that you're under threat. So if you can keep the mouth closed and sustain your nasal breathing, you're way more likely to keep your body in that parasympathetic rest and digest state. You just got to start slowly, do as much as you can. And what I normally suggest is if you can't breathe through the nose, and say it's a run or exercise session, whatever it is you're doing, if you're going to be in kind of like zone 1 and 2, and you can almost like we use zone 1 and 2 as like a guide. You can use the
Yeah.
nose as a, so you go at nose pace.
Okay.
You know, if you're struggling, you slow down until you can sustain that. Now, it might feel like you're taking a step backwards, but when that nasal breathing catches up, you'll take 2-3 steps forwards. The nose is for breathing, the mouth is for eating,
Yeah.
right? I shared a post recently on my TikTok and how just I've been kind of fascinated by it lately, this like nasal breathing, as though it's this new trend, this new fad that everyone needs to try. And like it's not, it's normal breathing. Nasal breathing is just breathing.
Yeah.
It's how we're supposed to be doing it.
I mean, it's interesting because I remember having 2 kids, and they, when they're born, you go through like your NCT classes and the doctors and stuff. And actually, I googled this between the last failed episode and this one. I've got it here. So young babies don't develop the reflex to breathe through their mouths until they are 3 or 4 months old. And in children, mouth breathing can lead to microtraumas of the tonsils and adenoids, causing them to enlarge and restrict the airways. So that is, go right back to when we're born. We don't actually breathe through the mouth. It is all through the nose.
Yeah, and a lot of these problems, I mean, you can obviously, you can be predisposed to asthma genetically, and allergies and things like this. But a lot of this stuff doesn't come out until kids are a little bit older, around the age of 4 or 5, I think, for most people. So yeah, we're all, majority of us are born breathing perfectly. You watch a baby breathe, it's like the whole thing inflates. Like biomechanics are great, it's using its nose. You know, the same for movement as well, right? Like toddlers, like perfect movers, like the perfect squat, all of that. And it's unlearned as we get older. We start to pay attention to it during the day, go out for those walks, just check in regularly. We all need the cues. We all need something to trigger that thought. How am I breathing right now? When you're having that thought more often, you know, it just snowballs until, yeah, I mean, for me, I'm thinking about it a lot, probably too much.
Are you thinking about it now then, Adam, with your breathing?
Yeah, breathing and speaking is something that I find really difficult.
Okay.
And it's really important because obviously speaking is exhaling through the mouth.
Yeah. Because we talked about it on the last bottle. We keep calling it the failed podcast. It's got its own name. It's become
its own episode title. We'll put it up.
Yeah. We were talking about it on the failed episode, that you talk about when you rest, that you don't do a lot of speaking because that is you're trying to prevent to retain all the breath, if that makes sense. I don't know if that makes sense to you. I don't know if you want to talk about that.
Yeah, no, I try and be quiet during rest. Historically, looking back, there's been, you know, certain figures in the past who literally withheld speech for health reasons. And yeah, I think, you know, there's a very good reason why monks move around slow and they don't speak very much. They're very quiet. You know, they move in silence. And yeah, I mean, they learn to breathe before they learn to count. It's just so fundamental. And hopefully, yeah, I mean, my goal is to get this stuff taught in schools at some point.
What's the best way to reduce or control the breath to reduce your heart rate or to keep your heart rate low, either before an event or during an event?
So no, this is a really interesting question, and respiratory rate and heart rate are really closely intertwined. One of my first clients, actually, she's an Olympic finalist, and her resting heart rate dropped by 10 beats within a few weeks of working together.
Wow.
And this is a fit elite level athlete. And yeah, just a simple bit of education. This one thing to remember as well is that, you know, you can be incredibly fit and not necessarily that good at breathing. I've been an example of that in the past. And there's lots of other examples out there. But also, you know, not necessarily being good at breathing doesn't mean you're unfit. But they can certainly complement one another. There's the relationship between respiratory rate and heart rate. When we inhale, the heart rate speeds up. When we exhale, the heart rate slows down. So it's the difference between this pace, the discrepancy there that's what heart rate variability refers to. But we can manipulate this knowledge and we can extend that exhale, and that can slow our heart rate down.
And we're doing that through the nose or through the nose and mouth for that purpose, or?
Ideally, it's nose.
Yeah.
When we're exercising, we talk about gears. There's different gears to this. So nose in, mouth out would be the slightly harder gear. Mouth in, mouth out is absolute maximal if you need it. I'm not sure there's many situations where that's appropriate.
Yeah.
Even nose in, mouth out, for the majority of people, it probably is a gear to go into, with the goal to train the nose in, nose out to be able to sustain it at those higher intensities as well, though.
So let's have a look at giving yourself a little plug. If people want to learn more from you, obviously we've only got this podcast episode. Where can people go to get some of this information from you?
Yeah, so I've got some really exciting stuff coming up. Recently started working with a new business coach to help me kind of flesh this out all a bit.
Yeah.
So at the moment, if people you can go onto my Instagram. I'm at slalom_Burgess. I've got a website link on there. If you want the website as well, it's just www.adam-burgess.co.uk. I've got a link on there. You can register interest. And if you do that, I'll be in touch very soon about all my offerings. I think we're going to have group offerings as well as one-to-one work as well.
Excellent.